Good morning and welcome to Voices of the Disabled, brought to you by Adaptive Chicago Productions. I'm your host, Kenneth Borst, here with you on this gorgeous election day, February 26th, 2019. It's not only election day and we're doing a show, but it is my sister-in-law's 72nd birthday. Happy birthday, Linda Price. And Randy, message to you, my brother, make sure that she has the best birthday ever. And well, as you know, ladies and gentlemen, we're living in an ever-changing world. How much it's going to continue to change will remain to be seen for all of us. But I'm specifically talking about the blind population today. Many changes come along all the time for us, some good, some bad, and some, well, we just don't know yet. Here today to talk to us about the Washington seminar held every year by the National Federation of the Blind in late January, where we speak to legislators in Washington about our legislative issues, is Marilyn Green, the legislative queen. Welcome to the show, Marilyn.
Hello, thank you for having me here.
First of all, a few introductory questions here, so to kind of get our viewers up to speed here. You are a member of the National Federation of the Blind, correct?
Yes, a proud member.
Yes, how long have you been a member of the National Federation of the Blind?
2017 I joined, so a little under 2 years.
Okay. For those out here who don't know, both of us know, but for those who don't know, please tell us in your own words what the National Federation of the Blind is and what we do.
The National Federation is the oldest organization of the blind. We are the blind speaking for ourselves. We have approximately 50 members throughout all 50 states, as well as Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. We are a grassroots advocacy organization. As you said, we go to Washington, D.C. at least once a year to advocate for our issues. We have a national convention once a year. Each state has its own state convention, so out of those 52 affiliates, each state has their own process, but we are all under the umbrella of the National Federation of the Blind.
Yes, I'm glad that you clarified that we are the blind, the organized blind movement, an organization of blind people speaking for ourselves, because that often is confusing for the public. They think of an organization of people speaking for the blind, but that's not us at all, is it?
No, it's not. Since I am still new to the organization, I'm always learning things from our leaders. Yeah. And that is one of the things that I've learned. We have elections, and we select members who are blind, who are elected by us as the blind membership.
Yes, I think that's wonderful, and we've been around since 1940.
Yes,
correct?
We have. Yes, 79 years.
Yes, we started by we were started by Dr. Jacobus Tinbrook, and then it was Dr. Kenneth Jernigan, and then Dr. Mark Maurer, and now Mark Riccobono. So we are now on our fourth presidency, and I know I've been reading the Braille monitor since the early 70s. I joined in the mid-80s myself and got away from it for a while and then rejoined, and I'm really happy that I did, because it is an organization where you learn a lot, and certainly learn how to advocate for ourselves. Directing your attention to the Washington seminar specifically, please tell us, Marilyn, what were the legislative accomplishments for this year?
Our legislative accomplishments for this year have been the Marrakesh Implementation Treaty, which I spoke to you about last year. After 10 years of hard work by members of the National Federation of the Blind, we were able to get President Trump to sign the ratification documents, And
that's wonderful. I was so afraid
yes,
that was never going to happen.
yeah.
The Marrakesh Treaty being passed, and explain what that is for those who don't know.
Yeah, for your viewers who are not familiar with the Marrakesh, for a number of years, it has been illegal because of copyright laws to pass accessible materials across borders. So with Marrakesh, we will now have free access to foreign language materials from other countries that are signed on to the Marrakesh Treaty.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm really happy about that because, you know, Braille is in trouble as it is, and it's been a huge concern of mine. And when I think about how I'm almost 66 years old, and when I was a little boy, 50% of us were learning Braille, and of course there were a lot more blind children at that time because there were a lot of children being, you know, premature babies that had too much oxygen. And from what I understand, that's gotten fixed, so that's not the problem as much anymore. And now the big deal is people going blind later in life, and that's so much harder because, you know, you have to readjust to so many other things. But I was really concerned about this thing with the Marrakesh Treaty because I thought, you know, that would be one thing that could be used against us. Well, you know, gee, you know, Braille material isn't accessible from country to country, and now that it is, that's just another strength that we have in an argument in favor of Braille to be able to keep it. And that's one of the things that I myself am afraid of. And I have to tell you, I've been talking about that at my church, and one of my church members that's on our board of servants has promised me that he's putting a notification on his Facebook page along with the National Federation of the Blind contact information to let people know, hey, if you have a blind child who has been denied Braille instruction, this is who you need to contact. They will help you get everything you need in your arsenal so that your child can receive Braille instruction, because as Mark Maurer has often said, literacy is the seed of success for us.
Definitely.
That we need our literacy. And you know, I've often heard people say to me, well, you know, after all, isn't it true that there are technological alternatives? And I said, yes, that's an age-old argument. But then I say to these sighted people, okay, has technology deprived you of your literacy? And their answer is obviously no. Well, okay, well then why should it deprive us of our literacy? And they look at me like I lost my mind, and then they stop and think about it and say, you know, I haven't thought of it that way. Well, you know what? You need to think of it that way because that's exactly the way it is. What else was accomplished legislatively at the Washington seminar?
Well, before we were at Washington seminar, there was also the Space Available Act, and that relates to disabled veterans and their access to airlines, their access to be able to board planes. And it's specifically related to people who were blind, but it related to all disabled veterans. And the National Federation of the Blind was the only disability organization that took that on. And we're very proud of what has been accomplished for our veterans, blind and disabled, whether due to their service or any other purposes that they became disabled.
That's great. That was another thing that I was pessimistic about. And I was afraid we weren't going to be able to accomplish that. And I'm so glad that we have. You know, we're again, you know, it helps to have an organization that's almost 80 years old, that's 50,000 plus strong, and it seems like we're getting progressively stronger each year. I hope I'm right about that, and I hope we continue to be. Anything else that we need to know that was accomplished? at the Washington seminar?
Those are our accomplishments. We had 3 issues that we brought to legislators this year, and we hope that they will be successes in the future.
What are the 3 issues?
The 3 issues are one that I spoke to you about last year, which is the Access Technology Affordability Act. There was also the greater accessibility through independent non-visual access technology. Say that 3 times really fast.
Yes.
We call it the GAIN Act, as well as there's the Disability Employment Act. So those were the 3 issues that we went to Capitol Hill to educate our legislators about.
And how do you think we've done with that?
It's moving along. We do not have originating co-sponsors. Unfortunately, we lost our originating co-sponsor who was in Iowa for the Access Technology Affordability Act. But we are working with the Judiciary Chair to get a JCT score, which is the Joint Commission on Taxation, because initially for the Access Technology Act, it will require the government to pay out money because, let me tell you, the Access Technology Affordability Act, for your viewers who might not remember, is a refundable tax credit for the blind. It's a $2,000 refundable tax credit that will be given over a 3-year period of time.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's a lot of gains.
Yeah, and it's for any assistive technology that we might need as blind people, whether it's screen readers, magnification systems, Braille note takers, which we know can run up to $6,000. So just incredible prices.
Very expensive, yes.
And as we know, that unfortunately it ranges, but 71% with the last Census Bureau, it's estimated that 71% of blind people are unemployed and underemployed, and we believe that if we put this access technology into the hands of blind people, it will give us greater opportunities for education as well as for work opportunities. And it's a refundable tax credit. We won't be dependent upon the state to give us, to go through tedious paperwork and a waiting period and determining what it is that we need. We can go ahead and pay for that equipment and then request our tax credit.
That's wonderful. Also, 14C was discussed, correct?
Oh yes, 14C is always on our radar. 14C is just what I think is a shameful thing that happens in this country for all people with disabilities, and that has to go to, that's a part of the Disability Employment Act that we spoke to our legislators about. There are, I didn't know this before I joined the National Federation of the Blind, that there's a provision in the Fair Labor Standards Act that allows not-for-profits that bid to get 14C certificates to pay sub-minimum wages to their disabled employees. And these employees are segregated from their sighted colleagues. There's no opportunity for advancement. And we have been working, as you know, Kenny, for a number of years to get this taken away, get this taken out of the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Yes, yeah, I'm aware that we've been working on that for quite some time, because that's been in place, I believe, since 1938.
Yes, before the National Federation of the Blind. And
yeah, 2 years before the National Federation of the Blind came to be. And you know, the thing is I was discussing this with a blind friend of mine who is not a member of NFB, but however has come to some meetings with me, and she says, well, you know, I think it's okay to pay sub-minimum wage to disabled employees for their probationary period. And I said, yes, but the problem with that is it's gone beyond that. It's been their entire lives.
Yeah.
Okay? And the problem with, even if it is during their probationary period, hey, it doesn't matter. That person still has bills to pay. You know, and you can't say to your creditors, well, I'm sorry, I can't pay this bill because I'm just not making enough money. You know, the shop that I work for pays sub-minimum wage and with a 14C certificate. The people you owe money to, they don't want to hear that. And, you know, why should they have to? That's irrelevant to them, and that would be taken care of should people get get paid enough, and I think, that's a situation even now. I mean, as I was telling you just before we got on this show, I have a business owner just down the street from me that's upset about the Democratic Party wanting to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and he's upset about that because he either has to cut staff or cut back their hours. And I said, okay, but the increase is not going all at once. Mm-hmm. Well, the thing with 14C, I mean, yes, we do need to get rid of it, because you can't take for granted that that person isn't living on their own, and they still have to pay their bills. And there are more and more people with disabilities living on their own and running their own households.
Yes, we have members throughout the country college educated. We have a couple in the South, college educated, husband and wife, who are both working under 14C sheltered workshop and have to go to food pantries to feed their families. And we believe at NFB that's unacceptable.
Of course that's unacceptable, because if they were not disabled, they would be able to just work anywhere and get paid whatever anybody else was paid, and that's how that should be for disabled workers. And I think it's a shame that the owners of these shops keep getting richer and richer while their workers keep getting poorer and poorer.
Yes.
And yes, we do need to remedy that, and if it takes the rest of our lives to do so, well, then that's just what it does, because after we're gone from this place, we got future generations that will need to deal with the same thing, and that's why it really needs to, these changes really do need to take place, and I think we have a lot going on, but as Mark Riccobono would always tell us, we have a lot more to continue to. We still have a lot of work to do yet.
Yes, our work is not done. Our members throughout the country are constantly working on our issues. We spend 2-3 days in Washington, D.C. to educate our legislators. We go through intensive training to be able to educate our legislators, but that's not the only work that we do. Those are just 2 or 3 days on the Hill. We're sending emails, we're going in district to talk to our legislators, we're contacting their offices, we're going to speak to them wherever we can find them to let them know, because as you know, the more that we can educate people, the better our circumstances will become. I heard during our training sessions, and I found out later it was said by Shirley Chisholm, if we're not at the table, we're on the menu.
That's right.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
But that's, yeah. And the truth is, yeah, absolutely. We have a lot to do, and as I say, let's keep up the good work, and thank you for being here, and on behalf of Voices of the Disabled with Adaptive Chicago Productions, this is Kenneth Borst saying thank you for watching and have a good day.
Hi, this is Rob Rotman for Voice of the Disabled. We have a very interesting segment now. Not only is Marilyn Green a very strong advocate with the National Federation of the Blind, she also has an interesting hobby. Marilyn, what is your hobby?
I like to attend the opera.
How long have you been an opera fan?
I've enjoyed opera since I was a child.
Wow.
In music class, we would go to the Opera House and to the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, back then known as Orchestra Hall. But I always thought financially it was out of my reach, and now with sight loss, definitely out of my reach visually.
Right.
So thanks to the National Federation of the Blind and the great advocacy of the Civic Opera House and their staff, the Lyric does at least one audio described performance for each of their performances each season.
That's great. What is it like when you go into the opera, take your seat, and how do you hear it? You hear it through phones, or what am I trying to say?
It's actually through a receiver. Okay. If some of your viewers remember the Walkmans from back in the 80s, right. They're about that size, and you just have a connection to earbuds.
Okay.
And there is an audio describer on the other side. Martin Wild, who is a fabulous audio describer, right. does the descriptions for the Lyric Opera. And Martin describes everything. Normally before the opera, they offer a touch tour, so we're able to go behind the stage and touch the costumes, some of the props. So it's really a great experience, because even though Martin is great at description, he's not always able to explain to us during the performance the intricacies of the costumes and the beading and things like that. Right. So it's great to be able to just put that earbud in and listen and know exactly what's going on as far as who's entering from the left, who has entered, because not always will you recognize the voices. I always tell people it's really great that when someone comes onto the stage and it's not supposed to be known, that he actually says it. He'll say, Rob enters from the left, unbeknownst to Joel, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, that's great. So how long have you been going to the Lyric?
About 2 years now.
2 years, great. Mm-hmm. What are some of your favorite operas?
I just recently saw La Boheme a couple of weeks ago. It was at the Lyric. As I was telling you earlier, I saw La Traviata on Sunday. I was really interested in that because one of my favorite movies is Pretty Woman. Sure. And it was featured in there, so I learned a lot. So I've been going for a couple of years. I started with My Fair Lady. They do a Broadway performance each year. I saw their performance of Jesus Christ Superstar last year. So normally I try to look at the synopsis of the opera to see if it's something that I think I would enjoy.
Right. Do you get like like a season brochure that tells you about all the operas, so you can figure out this is what I'd like to see?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they have it for each of the performances, but I usually don't attend all of the Lyric Opera performances. That's great.
Like when you're sitting in your seat and you're listening to the audio description, how what I'm trying to say is, what is it like when you hear the music? I mean, is that where your prime focus is on then?
My focus kind of goes back and forth between the music and the description. Mm-hmm. It can sometimes, especially when I first started, I mostly listened to Martin because it was just so phenomenal to be able to have this experience of seeing without seeing. And I didn't pay as much attention to the music. Now that I've gone through several performances, now I'm able to kind of split my time between Martin's description and the singing of the performers. So it's really wonderful. The music, just the sound, just everything that's in there. That's great. The house staff is wonderful as well.
That's great. And are the prices reasonable? Because obviously anyone thinks opera. Well, it's beyond my price range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Lyric, they do for each of those audio described and touch tour performances, they offer us a great discounted price of $20. And I am able to take one guest with me. So I can't take a whole group of people. But I've actually a friend has been going with me recently who's new to blindness, and she's been enjoying it as well.
I don't know if are you aware, are there any operas with blind characters?
None that I am aware of. I'm sure there probably are,
right,
but just none that I'm aware of.
Right. And would you love to see, if there by chance is a blind opera singer come to the Lyric and perform. Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, the more opportunity that we have as blind people to show our talents, I think it's a great opportunity for education in all communities, whether it's entertainment or legislature or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. Now I know West Side Story is coming up. Do you plan to see that?
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm thinking, that that'll be an interesting, maybe to have you come back and talk about, because West Side Story folk is so much about dance.
Okay.
So what it'll be like for you, you're sitting there and you're listening, to Bernstein's incredible music, how, maybe the audio describer describes the dance, so you can, all these incredible elements of this musical and how they come together and how you react to it and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Marilyn. Great, good having you, and good listening.
Thank you for having me.